So parathas are one of the single greatest textural experiences of all time. So hopefully those intro shots did it justice, and they're actually quite easy to make. It's all about how we layer that dough. Let's break it down.
So parathas are kind of like if a flour tortilla and a puff pastry had a baby. And by this, I mean the dough ingredients and ratios are very similar to that of a flour tortilla, but it kind of has the technique of developing layers much like a puff pastry. So let's make them. To start, place a bowl over a scale and add 500 grams of all-purpose flour, 10 grams of salt, and 30 grams of vegetable oil, then just coarsely mix that together with your hands. Now, a note here, traditionally Maida would be used, which has slightly less protein, and this can be found online if you want it, but all-purpose works just fine here. Once mixed, add 300 grams of room temperature water and mix the dough with your hands until no dry flour remains in the bowl. Then you're just going to slide a lid over the top, and we're going to let that rest for 15 minutes, which is going to allow the dough to relax. Once rested, just knead the dough in the bowl for about 5 minutes, then we're going to check to see if it passes the gluten window test. So this is a test we basically do for every single dough, and you just want to cut a piece off and see if you can stretch it until you can see a translucent window, and this shows that the flour has been hydrated and the gluten network has formed, which is going to give us that elasticity and chew in the dough. Next, divide the dough into equal pieces. I like to do roughly 8 100-gram pieces or 10 80-gram pieces. You can go bigger or smaller just depending on your preference. Once you have those weighed out, just place them on the sheet tray, and we're going to let these rest for 15 minutes before rolling them out and folding them, and this is where the layers are made and things get interesting. So the basic premise to create those flaky layers is to roll the dough out very thin so it's basically translucent, then spread ghee all over it, maybe a little sprinkle of flour, and then fold it up in a different way to create those layers in the dough before letting it rest and rolling it out into its final shape. Now, there are a couple of different methods to the fold, so let's try some to see which ones are best. First up is the triangle fold from Medor Jaffrey's book. So you just take a portion of the dough, roll it out into a circle roughly 8 or 9 inches in diameter, then brush the surface of the paratha with some softened ghee, though you could use butter in a pinch if you want to, and then a little sprinkle of flour, and then fold that in half. You're going to spread some more ghee on that half and then fold it once more until you have a fourth of a circle, so roughly a triangle shape. And you can see how those layers have been created, and this will happen when we roll it out again. Next is the fold and coil, and there are a couple different ways that fall into this category, but the basic premise is wrapping them up into a coil, and I do prefer this texture over the triangle. Again, roll out a portion of the dough very thin so it's translucent and spread the ghee on. Then instead of in half, we're going to fold this over halfway back to create these accordion folds, which layers the dough all the way up the circle, and you can see we get tons of layers. Then we're just going to roll that rectangle up into a circle, and you're going to pinch the tail end into the bottom. Now, another variation on this method is one that I saw from Kunal Kapoor, and basically you just roll this out as thin as possible, and of course spreading that ghee on it. Then you pick up one end and just kind of pinch it into a log with your hand, which creates all these super tiny layers for the parathas. Of all these, I think these yield the lightest and flakiest layers, but whichever one that you decide, they will all turn out beautiful. So after you have folded them, you probably want to let them rest for at least 15 or so minutes to let them relax a bit before rolling them out, and then you want to roll them out into roughly an 8 or 9 inch circle, and then to cook these, it could not be easier. So you have two basic options here. You can fry once and then eat them right away, or you can dry cook them, freeze them, and then fry them for eating. The first option is pretty easy. You just place a pan over medium heat along with a little bit of oil or ghee, and then once that's hot, drop the paratha into the pan and start frying it on one side until it starts to turn golden brown. You want to press down on it a little bit and circle it just to ensure you're getting some even heat. Then once it has started to brown and cook through, flip it over and repeat that process. You want to flip it multiple times just to make sure it's not browning too much on one side. Again, you can use more oil and ghee as needed if you want to. You just want to completely cook it through. Then right after cooking, many people scrunch these up to release the steam and expose those layers, which you can absolutely devour. Now, the second method is from Sola's Serious Eats article, and I think makes a lot of sense for home cooks. So to start, you just want to place a pan over medium heat again, but don't add any oil or ghee. Instead, just add the paratha to the pan and dry cook it on one side for a couple of minutes. You'll start to see that wet spot disappear, then you just want to flip this over and repeat on the other side, and you don't want to get them fully crisp, just some light browning and no wet spots remaining. Once those are cooked, just set them on the cooling rack and cook the remaining parathas. And I like to place a piece of parchment paper in between them so they don't stick, and then transfer them to a freezer bag. Now, when you're ready, you just whip one out and follow that exact process from the first method with a little bit of ghee, and again we have flaky, crispy, but still slightly chewy paratha. Now, Madhur Jaffrey notes in her book that these go great with any number of Indian vegetable dishes. They also make some killer Kathi rolls, which is the next video, so subscribe so you don't miss it. But what I did for this one was just eat a lot of them plain, and especially if you sprinkle some sugar and a little bit of cinnamon over top, they are absolutely to die for. You have to make these. Oh my goodness.
So this is literally probably my 5th one of these today. I cannot stop eating them. So I'm probably gonna drop into a food coma, take a nap for like an hour or two, but that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. You have to make these. Seriously, one of the best textural experiences of all time. Catch you in the next one. Peace, y'all.